Okay. So let us start with the front page, folks. The first page of yesterday's newspaper. So if you see this, you will see that this is the world page is there, and then there is another coup attempt that has been done. But something very interesting that is happening these days in newspaper is every day if you see the Indian Express, the first page is regarding an ad with respect to the this thing, your competition between news channels. So for your interview, you can probably have a look at this. That what is happening. While there's so many ads coming these days with respect to competition between news art, and maybe you can also read on for your interview. You can also read on the kind of polarization as well as the kind of politicization and the ownership of newspaper digital media. So that is another dimension that you can read on. That is another dimension, by the way, you can think and read on for civil services as well, which is very important because media is supposed to be the fourth estate or the fourth pillar of democracy. And what we have had is a consolidation of digital media by either a few business houses or few political houses. So newspapers are typically owned by a lot of political houses, and even news media, you have political houses or business houses owning all of this. And this is not just in India, this is also in Britain, this is also in US. So I mean give it a thought, and something interesting for you to read. Maybe have application in ethics essay or in general your interview as well. So the first, if you see the first page, another coup attempt in Africa, this time in Gabon. So all these African states are extremely rich in resources, but at the same point of time they are extremely vulnerable to your civil wars as well as all these strifles, religious strifles as well. And there's a wonderful movie that I would recommend you to watch. It's called Blood Diamond, which talks about that how these African nations are typically very destabilized because of the resources. So resource in itself becomes a curse at times, be it Sierra Leone, Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Chad, Mali. But you need to identify all of these. So all 55 countries of the of the continent of Africa, you need to place them well and where they are. So you can use a political map of Africa and then start to remember these countries. At least see these countries for the first time. When it comes to prelims, I'll help you with certain codes and mnemonics that how you can remember all of them, where they are placed. But this is important for you. So what we have now is that even Gabon, the oil rich. Remember, I told you these are all rich countries in terms of resources. So soldiers have arrested the president, and it's an oil rich country, and again the entire country is gone into chaos, as in case with Niger, Burkina Faso, Chad, and Mali. So this is one thing. The other is US inks a pact with Palau. So I want you to see these countries of Oceania, which are Palau, Micronesia, Polynesia. All these countries you should be able to identify where they are, and what because Chinese influence. Remember the new Chinese map that we were discussing yesterday, that they've also said that everything under this 7-line or 9-line is Chinese territory. In fact, a new development that has happened last night is that Xi Jinping will not be coming to the G20 event. So if you see, the United States has signed this agreement with Palau, which gives American ships the authorization to unilaterally force maritime regulations in the Pacific exclusive economic zones. So US is also in talks with Philippines facing Taiwan. So US is militarizing and basically stamping its strategic authority and military authority in the Pacific as to counter the influence of China. So another article that you need to see. Then coming to the front page. Now remember this example that I gave you, that it's an example of poor governance, because governance requires that you need governance. One of the key factors of governance is that it needs to be participated, needs to be predictable. But what has happened is that the government of India just one day before came up with this new regulation. The DGFT came up with this regulation that you need a license to import these laptops and electronic devices. And then there was a lot of hue and cry, because of which this entire proposal was set 3 months back, and delayed for 3 months. But the intention of the government was that to force these companies like Dell, your HP, and your Asus, and all these companies which make laptops, to force them to use the PLI scheme, because the government has launched this PLI scheme for the last few years, but there have been few takers of this scheme. So if you see that in the last few years, only 4,000 crore rupees has been taken up. But this kind of measure has forced these companies, except for Apple, I guess, Asus, Dell, HP, Foxconn, all of them have applied for personal laptops for participation in the PLI scheme. And one of the reasons is, it's a very debatable reason, that should India go for such kind of import substitution industrialization. Now remember, and this is my kind of my personal argument is that when we last time tried it, last time we had a policy of import substitution industrialization along with export pessimism. So we did not want to export, we just did not want to import that commodity. This was the policy that we had during the socialist era, that or the pre-liberalization era that we have had. Now what has happened is that the Indian market has expanded, and for a lot of these companies, India is a major base. And in any case, all these countries wants to nudge out of, or want to have an alternative strategy in terms of China plus one strategy. So what you have done is you have nudged them forcefully towards manufacturing in India. But at the same point of time, while this will help in India's manufacturing, this will not create much of employment, because this all is high tech employment. This is not labor intensive. This is capital intensive. Yes, it is going to benefit India, and in the long run, we are going to get technologies that we can indigenously produce more laptops as well. So in that sense, in my personal opinion, it's a good thing. But at the same point of time, if you talk about improving employment because of this, I don't think that there is going to be much of a change, because these are not employment elastic industry. So that is how you can probably argue it out, if one has to argue it out critically. So read about this particular article. Then the other article that is mentioned here is reasons varied states agreed MSP fixed by the center is not enough. Now what the Indian Express has done, Indian Express has filed an RTI, and in this RTI they asked for the minutes of the meeting of the MSP decision by CACP. So you should know, people who are new to this, you should know that your CACP is the body which basically decides the MSP of commodities, and you should remember all the commodities for which MSP is being given. So this is something that you should know for sure, that on what commodities MSP is given, and both Rabi and Kharif crops. But at the same point of time, what is being talked about in this particular article is that while MSP is there as a nation, not every particular state faces similar kind of situation. For example, Rajasthan, Punjab, Odisha, they said that the hike is insufficient because of the kind of environment that they have been facing. Some of these states had faced drought last year despite a normal monsoon. Some of these states had faced a drought, a localized drought for the crop that they are talking about. So while overall the MS Swaminathan, so another thing that you should know is that there was an MS Swaminathan committee which talked about 50% plus 50% markup over C2 cost. Now, what is C2 cost? C2 cost is the cost of cultivation of the farmer, which includes everything that you can think of in cost of cultivation, including imputed labor. For example, I am using my own labor. I am using my own labor. My family is using is being used on the field, then I also include the notional value of them as a labor. If it's my land, then I also notionally include my own rent as well, opportunity cost of my rent. So that all these costs that are there is covered under C2 cost, and plus a 50% markup is what the MS Swaminathan committee says. But at the same point of time, there are very differences in terms of state-wise requirements, and that is not being and that is what the article says that was discussed in the CACP minutes of the meeting. Then apart from that, Chandrayaan 3 has sent this beautiful image. I mean the Vikram lander by Pragyan rover. So you can probably have a look at that. Then coming to, so read these articles. MSP and the 32 firms that have applied for PLI scheme. Then maybe you can also have a look at what is a blue moon, how is it different from a super moon, how is it different from a normal. So maybe this is something that you can. Then a couple of other things I'll just say. So 79 Indians favorable of Modi, 68% feel India is getting stronger. Survey, but this is what is important. One is Maharashtra stays at drought agri crisis with 40% rain in August. So we've already talked about the fact that India wise, India gets 22% of its monsoonal rain in the month of August, and we've already seen that the average level of monsoon rain that we get in August is 255 mm. But this time we've got only 160 mm, which is at a historic low, and there are certain states where you have even more than 50% rain deficiency, which is going to have a huge impact not just on the final output of the kharif crop, but what is more concerning for us is that the impact that it will have on the rabi crops, because it is the time for aquifers to be recharged and the dams to be recharged, so that to use that water during the upcoming season. So which will have major impact on policy making as well as inflation in coming times. So this article talks about that. The other thing is mission to the sun. So you need to know about what is this Aditya L1 mission. So you also need to know about what is this L1. This is Lagrange 1. So read about what is this L1 Sun Earth Lagrange point, from where unhindered photographs can be taken of the sun, and this particular mission talks about that we need to study the sun ejection mass and the solar flares, and it will help us understand the mechanism of a particular star as well. So these are so it will provide observations of the corona of sun and its magnetic field, as well as multiple other things that we are going to use. Then we had already talked about the kind of rockets that we've used. This is going to be launched by PSLV C-57 rocket. Now you need to know about all the launch vehicles. We've already talked about this in the previous few days. We've talked about GSLV, we've talked about PSLV. So and we have also talked about the ramjet engines, the cryogenic engines. So something that you should know now by now. Let's move on to page number. Let's move on to this. Cut that counts. Now we already know that we are reeling under an inflation rate of 7.44%, and what the government has done previously is that it has cut the LPG prices by 200 rupees for everyone. But under Ujjwala now this results in a price of 400 rupees drop, and this is over and above what the state governments give the subsidy to everyone. And it is said that it is also populist in nature, because something similar had been done in 2019 when the PM came up with the scheme called PM Kisan, giving 6,000 rupees to every particular person. Now, where the critical analysis of this will come is that Do you think that this is a freebie or is it not a freebie? That is a typical question that you can get in your interviews. That is a typical question that you can get in your mails. So that is something that is there that you have to decide. But at the same point of time, what you need to also remember is that more than 50% of rural households use LPG, more than 90% of urban households use LPG. And what we have also seen is that there are takers for the Ujjwala scheme in the initial go, but people don't go for refills. Maybe this can help people to go for this LPG cylinders and nudge them towards a better, not just economically helpful, but also health wise helpful, especially in rural areas where this chula is the alternative for LPG. So all of these are reasons why this cannot be called as a freebie. Maybe this is a welfare measure. So read about this. And by the way, the cost will be absorbed by the oil marketing companies. We'll see that in the upcoming article. Then chasing the sun. After this, L1 mission is now being planned and it will be launched sometime this week. And there are, there are, of course, there are going to be difficulties. There are going to be difficulties reaching the moon, because reaching the sun because of the intense heat. But at the same point of time, this particular mission will go far further in space as compared to the Chandrayaan mission. So now we've launched all these scientific missions to study other objects. So the mission on moon had a different objective. Mission on for sun has a completely different perspective. Unlike the rush for moons, there are few missions to the sun. There are inherent difficulties going anyways near the sun, and it will be placed just at 1% distance of the sun from the earth. And we have other missions as well which have got closer. But the idea is to understand early warning system for solar eruptions, space-based communication and navigation systems, and then contribute to the scientific community. So with this, ISRO is establishing itself as a major player in the market of, or in the institutions of the world scientific community. Then maybe you can read about this Edinburgh festival. It's a good moment, and Mumbai's comedian uh, Uroj Ashraf's award that has been given to him. This is, I think, called as the comedy Oscar. So this is something that was new to me. The Fringe Comedy Awards are called as the comedy Oscars. So maybe you can have a read on that. Now, I had read this. I had read this particular article, but this is not very. This is not in fact important for you. But at the same point of time, maybe you can give it a read if you have time, because it talks about Vivek Ramaswamy, who is now being considered as a serious candidate, presidential candidate from the side of Republics, because he's recently won one of his this thing primaries, and one of his debates. Personally, I've seen him speak. I've heard him. For me, he makes a lot of sense, and he kind of strikes chord both with the Republicans as well as the Democrats. But a lot needs to be seen whether he can actually win the Republican bid for the presidential election. So this particular article is also a critical analysis of who Vivek Ramaswamy is and what does he stand for. But at the same point of time, I'm personally, I really like the way that he's talked, especially about his views on LGBTQ, were very sensible, so to say. So maybe you can give this a read, but not very important from the point of view exam. Therefore, I'm going to refrain. Then the next article is on scrutiny on judiciary. Now, this is an example that you can take in your answers, where judicial corruption is also there. And this article has been written by a former judge of the Madras High Court. And Madras High Court is one of the chief high courts. I mean, after the first high court that we had in India was the Kolkata High Court, and after that it is the Madras High Court, which dates back to 1861, 1862, and it has very long history of producing excellent judges. And this particular article talks about that how Madras High Court, or one of the judges, recently came out in came out with a judgment with scathing remarks, absolute scathing remark on the kind of three cases of I mean there were three MP cases, MP MLA cases, where the district courts and then the trial courts that were there, the speed trial courts that were there, had all acquitted these three people, but the way of their acquittal smacked of impropriety. And this is what Justice Venkatesh has mentioned. So if you see this paragraph, it talks about that how on August 10th, he ordered for reopening of cases of these three particular people, and this has sparked a political controversy in Tamil Nadu, because the ruling party DMK said that he is just like the governor. He says they say that the judge is biased against the government, but at the same point of time, what the learned judge has said that the special court has blindly accepted the closure report submitted by the investigating agencies. And we also know that these days we have weaponization of investigation agencies. So remember this word called weaponization of investigative agencies, where you have ED and you have CBI and you have all these investigative agencies, which are now being used as pawns in a political arena. So that is another development, and this was also mentioned by Ruchi Sharma in one of his Indian Express articles. So that is there. Then special courts have failed to give any reasons to acquit the accused, and the special court has resorted to a curious judicial technique by writing an order in a way nobody could, including the judge, could understand. So this completely smacks of judicial impropriety, and he says that there is something very rotten about the special court for ML, this particular place. So this is what the initial part of the article talks about. Then another then this particular judge is also now being trolled on social media, and instead of going for a vendetta, so a lot of courts, a lot of judges in the past have, you might have seen, is that whenever they have been criticized, they have called in people for with contempt of court. But what he said is that Justice Venkatesh quoted William Shakespeare that something is rotten in the state of Denmark, and on reading on the criticism, one reminder of Shakespeare's equally famous quote, "The lady doth protest too much." So basically, this shows the high kind of emotional question that and the kind of kind of thick skin that you need to develop for criticism when it comes to even judicial pronouncements. So, a wonderful article, folks, that you can use. And then you have a couple of quotes from J.S. Verma: "Judicial corruption is the threat of foundation to a democracy. It undermines the rule of law and erodes public trust in judiciary." Maybe you can use this quote somewhere when it comes to judicial corruption. So read this article. The other two articles are all both of them are political in nature, so we will avoid them. Let's go on to the next article, which is explained. Page 2 articles that we need to read. One is the GDP growth trends and outlook. So yesterday the GDP numbers were released. So GDP numbers were released always after 2 months of the last date. For example, the first quarter is what? The first quarter of the year is April, May, June. So 30th June, your last day of the first quarter, and after 2 months means 31st of July and 31st of August. 31st of August, the data for the GDP is released. So you will see it in today's newspaper, the GDP data. And what is expected is that our country, if you see the last 1 year, the GDP was 7.2%, based on the last quarter, which gave us a growth of 6.1% in the last quarter of last financial year. But this time round, although the first quarter GDP growth rate is expected to be at 8%, but what we expect after that is a decline in growth rate. Why? Because we already know that we have erratic monsoon, we have high inflation, erratic monsoon, weak mining output, and the government capex is now going to reduce because it will not have that firepower anymore just before the election. Then apart from that, there is also global slowdown that we are seeing throughout the world, because of which our exports and imports are also being hit. Remember that export and import data which shows that the trade deficit is going down, but at the same point of time our exports are also going down. So this basically shows that while the first sprint that we are going to get out of this particular exercise, or the numbers that we are going to get is somewhere around 8%, but at the same point of time, this is not a sustained growth that we are going to get over the next 1 year. And then we have sectors and interest rates. Interest rates might increase in the coming few months because if there is hardening of inflation, then the RBI will look forward towards increasing the interest rates to contain inflation. So all of these are factors because of which things don't look very sanguine. But at the same point of time, there is adequate. The good points are there is adequate credit that has been released to the market. There is the banking structure. There are incremental deposits that has doubled, and despite rising interest rates, the credit cycle has taken off. That these are some positive momentums that you can see. The next article is Karnataka's fact check unit, which talks about that Karnataka has placed a fact checking unit, just like the government of India has placed a fact checking unit in terms of the IT rules that were invoked last year, as well as the fact checking unit is now housed with the PIB. Similarly, Karnataka has also placed a fact checking unit, and it plans. And the issue is that there is a lot of fake news that has been circulated in these states, because of which there is violence, then there is social upheavals, and there is mass hysteria that is created. And to counter all of that, what the government of Karnataka is doing is government of Karnataka is coming up with this fact checking unit, which will basically check everything that is going to be relayed on the social media. But at the same point of time, this is also clamping down on the freedom of speech and expression, and that is what editors will say, that the scope of power and proposed fact checking units are too huge, and it can have a chilling impact on the freedom of speech and expression. Then maybe you can read the unusual full moon this Rakhi, but neither blue in color nor super in size. Read about that. Then coming to the economics page, folks. If you see the economics page, OMCs, important article, OMCs to absorb the LPG price cut, government subsidy unlikely for now. So OMCs, the oil marketing companies, will basically absorb this particular loss because they anyways get a lot of profit. They earn a lot of profits by refining oil, and then and not just refining. Refining is done by upstream companies. They also earn a lot of profit on the margins because of the fact that they've been selling at a higher cost as compared to the cost of the oil that is there. So the cost of oil has been decreasing in the international market, whereas the selling price has not come down. And what the government is saying, these oil marketing companies, is because you've earned a lot of profit in the previous few months, you can maybe absorb the price cut. Then another very important article, folks, very important article, is how pioneering EU law is forcing big tech to reduce digital surveillance. Now, last week, this is very important article, folks. Last week, what has happened is that the European Union has kicked in the Digital Services Act, which is overhaul the social media and the commercial e-commerce rules of the European Union. Now, what are the key features? We have talked about it in the previous month, but now that this is kicked in, this has huge implications for India. So don't just read this from the perspective of the world, but also read it from the perspective of the application in India that could be there. Faster removals and provisions of challenge that users. If the users have to say that you have to take down certain content, then faster content needs to be taken down. Then what it does is it also classifies these platforms into various scheme of things. For example, you have very large online platforms and very large online search engines, which are 45 plus million users, and all of them have a higher regulation pedestal as compared to normal startups. Then apart from that, direct supervision by European Commission. So European Commission is going to oversee the legislation at the member state level, Then more transparency on the algorithms, that how are their algorithms working. They have to make them open box. You have to see that whether there is bias or not in their algorithm or not, or is it favoring a particular entity or not. So that is there. Then clearly identifies the ads and who's paying for them. So you need to also mention, for example, if we open Facebook, if we open say Meta, or if we open this Instagram, it says that sponsored, something sponsored comes up, or even in Amazon. So but now also you need to mention who has sponsored it. That also needs to be mentioned, and identify and clear identification for ads and who's paying for that. Then how DSA has forced Meta, Google, and other ways to change. So it imposes a heavy penalty for non-compliance, which can scale up to 6% of global turnover, folks. Very, very important. Remember, our case, our Data Privacy Act says up to 250 crore rupees per incident. But here they say for their global revenue, 6% this thing can be there. And it also requires companies that do not wish to abide by the rules to not to function within the European Union, and so basically they are coming up very hard on all of them. So this is a very, very important article for you to read. The other thing is, the other article that you can read is growth in the private corporate sector, sales profit down in the first quarter RBI study. Then apart from that, these two things. One is average time taken for IBC resolution at 3-year high. So basically IBC, the idea of IBC was that in 270 days you need to resolve the this thing. You need to resolve whatever financial problems that you have in a particular company. But these days, if you see the data, then what we can see is that the resolution is at 3-year high, in the sense that timelines are being extended. For CIRP yielding resolution, the timeline recorded in the first quarter of FY24 has been highest at 360, 635 and 643 days since FY21. So if you see this resolution part, so this number of days have been increasing, and it is also showing that we are taking much longer time to resolve these bankruptcy cases. So this is a major problem, and this is also seen in case of liquidation, where you sell off all the company. So you are missing the target by a huge amount, and that also leads to destruction of the capital value that is there in a particular company. So with this we end our newspaper. Now what we will do is, on Monday we will meet, folks, and on Monday we will discuss today's newspaper, because today's newspaper will have a lot of economic data that we need to incorporate into our lexicon, especially for those who are appearing for this year's Indian Economic Services interview. The other thing is that I'll be making a new group for the September cohort. So those of you who have not signed up, please sign up for the September batch. Thank you very much, folks. I'll see you on Monday.